So our What Just Happened segment is trying to tie to the legal profession some things that you and I follow in the broader landscape and what they mean for legal. And of course, we constantly talk about Ethan Mollick on our podcast because he's just prolific and really interesting and great and thoughtful. He's a professor at Wharton. You should follow him on LinkedIn if you're not already, or social media. But he and his colleagues just published a research report called The Cybernetic Teammate, a field experiment on generative AI reshaping teamwork and expertise. This research was designed to sort of test how generative AI would impact teamwork and across different functions within an organization. So do you want to summarize kind of what the researchers did, Bridget?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, you probably had already read about it when I texted it to you, as I'm wont to do on the weekends when I'm catching up on things. But Ethan wrote about this research in his Substack, his most recent Substack, and I read it and was like blown away because it's something that I think I can apply right away to our teams at the Triple. And yes, of course, we already did. We already built this experiment. But so the researchers worked with two teams at Procter & Gamble. I think that it was an R&D team and then a BD team, like a commercial business development team, to explore the different ways generative AI can make a difference across a business. And they had the participants work on real product challenges, I believe. They were, individually or sometimes in two-person teams. Some of them had the help of GPT-4 and some didn't. And then they just collected data across the different teams in those different formats. They were cross-functional. They combined the R&D teams with the commercial teams. And then they measured three outcomes: performance, like just how well they solve problems with, in the different team structures, whether they could bridge knowledge across specialties. So they called it expertise sharing, whether it made a difference, and then how they felt about it, kind of emotional reaction to the work or to performing the task. And, maybe not surprisingly, it turns out that AI makes a difference along all of those metrics. In performance, the people using generative AI performed at levels equivalent to teams that were without AI. So if I'm an individual and I team up with an AI, I'm going to perform at least as well as a two-person team or a multi-person team, and that also, AI replicated other aspects of team performance. Productivity is like a not surprising one, obviously, but innovation was another one, and I think Ethan has showed that in a bunch of other research as well, that it's a big boost to innovation. In expertise sharing, the teams that had AI, they effectively bridged knowledge silos, and so it was apparently a way to balance out a team when you were missing some kind of expertise, a shortcut kind of. The social engagement, the emotional impact was super interesting to me. The participants who used AI reported greater positive emotions. They were more enthusiastic, they were more engaged, and lower negative emotions, less anxious, less frustrated, which actually all of that totally checks out for me. Than the participants who worked alone on their own without any AI teammate. So super interesting, I think, across the study, and lots of takeaway for the legal professions. But before we talk about those, was there anything else about it that you think is worth mentioning before we sort of think about how it might matter for legal teams?
I don't think so. I mean, I keep finding this positive emotions thing really interesting.
Yeah.
And we could talk more about its implications for legal, but it also is consistent with my experience, especially the frustration piece, right? Because if you are trying to marshal human beings to do some of this work, it's not even that you're angry or anxious. It's just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like our AI ahas. It's so magical to be able to work with an AI. But it also echoes that other study that we talked about at University of Minnesota, where the law students reported enjoying using it more. But I'm conflicted about this because I also would have loved for some artificial intelligence to have done my work in law school.
Totally.
But that's the point when you're in law school, is to not really enjoy it because you're working and expending energy.
But is it the point?
I don't know. What is the point?
So that's the thing. I'm not sure. I mean, I know we have all these like long held beliefs about what the point is about how we do legal education. I'm just no longer completely confident about any of them, to be honest with you.
In preparation for our podcast, I took this study and plugged it into both Claude and ChatGPT and said, what are the implications of this for legal professionals and for junior lawyers in particular? And a lot of the things that came back were things that you and I have talked about before, right?
Yeah.
Like leaps in capabilities among junior lawyers, and the AI rightly identified, like, what does this actually mean if you're able as a first or second year to do the work of an eighth or ninth year lawyer? How are you developing? But the thing I found most interesting that I had not really focused on was this idea from the study of cross-functionality on teams. Mm-hmm. So they had somebody who was on the commercial side selling products for Procter & Gamble and somebody on the technical R&D side in these different pairs of teams. And I think the research found that in all cases, there was crossover expertise that was created by using the AI. So the commercial teams were able to sort of deploy R&D expertise and vice versa.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT and Claude both said in a law firm context or any practice context, this might mean the dissolution of barriers across practice areas. So you no longer have on a matter, your tax attorney, your real estate attorney, your M&A attorney. Maybe it's one attorney who's able to leverage AI across all of these different disciplines.
It's kind of back to the future, isn't it? Right? And like there's sort of like the legal profession became specialized and we all like got good at doing that one thing. Like I'm a tax lawyer or I'm a regulatory lawyer that works just in this one area, right? We have all these like specialists across the profession. And I guess that made sense when, the law is so opaque and hard to manage. And, when you have like significant risk, if you're a business that really has to get something right, like you want the specialist, right? You don't want the generalist who is the town lawyer who can do your will and also represent your kid if they get a DUI. And they can do your taxes probably, or at least give you that tax advice because they do everything. They're the lawyer down the street. But like maybe the lawyer down the street actually has a business model again. Like I think that's great news. Like I don't know. I mean, it might be better for like your quality of life to just be a general practice lawyer, and also if you can really give your community good advice, like maybe you can go live in that like rural community where you can set up a shingle and make a difference and also do it competently. I don't know. Are we back to the future?
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. And I mean, even for our own happiness, like you're saying, it's like the research from Marty Seligman at Penn and is it David Epstein who wrote Range?
Yes.
That we're naturally wired much more to be like that than these hyper specialized things that we do.
Yeah.
But it feels like if you go back to that earlier thought around this might be so delightful to interact with because there's less friction of like having to find somebody to help you with something. Maybe that's part of the reason those specialties emerged because you can go to your tax lawyer in your firm and there isn't that friction of like having to get up to speed. They just already are. But now what is the point, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't necessarily need that. But I like the idea of solo and small practices being able to just totally expand their service offerings, which is amazing. And maybe we can start to push back against some of that creep that Bill Henderson has been talking about since the 70s of moving from people law to corporate law only.
Yeah.
It also, the AI, when I plugged this in and asked it for questions to consider, asked relatedly, in addition to dissolving the barriers across practice areas, does this change the makeup of legal teams in terms of seniority in a law firm and the way that junior lawyers are developed? Like you wouldn't just be a litigation associate now working with only litigation partners.
Right.
Maybe you're an associate who works with a team of AIs and a team of partners across all different disciplines. And your job is to figure out how to marshal the AI.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like another like great opportunity for creativity if you're a law firm like willing to think about like how to completely restructure your business model and also your training model and your lawyer formation like content. I mean, it could be like I think it's a super exciting time to like lead a legal business right now, given all the possibility.
Also, our last episode, we talked about all the opportunities for education in this space. And it seems like there's huge opportunity in the PD space. I came from PD world, and there's not a ton of breakthrough innovations in that space in terms of just like something this transformative. So there's huge opportunities there. And as we've talked about so many different times in so many different places, that handoff point from law school to practice is so clunky and poorly designed and misshapen. There's just huge opportunity, I think, right there.
And like we talked about in the last episode, you don't have any of the constraints in like PD content that law schools do have. And so again, tons of upside potential. I mean,
totally.
Yeah.
Got to get Sharon on the phone again.
Yep.
If she's in the Jeep somewhere.
Sharon.
The last sort of thing that the AI raised, and this is something we've talked about before, but you mentioned the positive emotional effects. And I thought it was interesting. Again, it's just one of those moments where you're like, it's so nuanced in its understanding and its ingestion of all this stuff, because it clearly ingested a lot of information about how anxiety prone junior lawyers are because of the way that they're trained. And that was definitely me. I was terrified.
I was that way first year of law school. I mean, I read that finding and I was like, this would have been like a game changer for me, just showing up to civil procedure where I was terrified because it seemed like everybody else understood like what these rules were and why they mattered. And I was like, why are we talking about these rules? I had no lawyers in my family. I had never been to court. I went right to law school and I just didn't understand the context, like I needed like the big picture background. And I would now, like, before I went to civil procedure, I'd be like, okay, I don't understand why I'm reading this case. Like, what does this rule mean? Like, can you give me the background information that I should have had if I came from a family of lawyers or just had some like legal culture around me? And I would have been a lot more like I had a lot of anxiety in first year of law school.
Oh my gosh, please! I was a mess, Ask anyone who was around me. And it was because it was like this hide the ball thing of like, eventually you're going to have this breakthrough. Hopefully it happens before the one set of exams that you get to take that determine everything in your future, but it might not. And like, I wouldn't even go to study groups, which was the number one piece of advice.
I was too embarrassed because I thought I didn't know enough.
It freaked me out. So I would sit down with these kids that were the same age as me. They seemed to be human like me. And they would say these things. And I was like Fragile Frankie from Seinfeld. Like, I would just go back to my room and be like, this is it. I'm on my own because I don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And then you'd go up to the law library and your kind professor had put like a sample exam up there from last year's class.
That didn't help at all.
Made it so much worse. I was like, now I left this study group and now I'm going to look at this exemplary piece of writing from somebody my own level and I don't even know what's good about it. But imagine, even without like transformations in education and all that kind of thing, like just taking the sample exam and uploading it to Claude and saying like, what is good about this? Like, walk me through this. That is actually how it should be. To the extent that we think that that's a good way to test people, which is for our other, what is the point? But like, I'm going to go full on and say like, maybe I would have enjoyed law school if I'd had these supports. Maybe not. I'm getting too excited. But when I got into law firm practice, it was, I think law school was harder for me, but law firm practice was scarier, I think, because the partners were so scary. And now that I know a lot more about law firm business models, I get it more. Like, they had to keep their clients happy or else they would not be able to make a living.
For sure.
And they're trusting you, first year associate who couldn't even figure out how to use a study group to help them with something. And they're
You're not qualified at all.
I actually had a professor say that to me. You are completely unqualified for the job that they're paying you lots of money to do. And I said, I know I am. I'm not trying to assert that I am. But they're also like not great mentors by and large. They're not trained to mentor. They're carving out time from their billable work to try to develop you in a system that's never taught them to develop anybody.
In a way that they've had no help like learning how to do.
So this did like stand out to me of if we could find ways to support junior lawyers and law students in feeling less anxious and more engaged with the material and like less focused on their own anxiety, we could actually help them unlock superpowers of their own.
And
I don't really think we need to do much other than raise awareness to them, which they probably already have if they've listened to that kid at Columbia.
Yeah.
Right?
That there's a great shortcut. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So I thought it was an interesting study. It keeps reinforcing a lot of the themes that it elevates performance, that it reduces anxiety, and has some really interesting implications for legal. So I'm interested to hear from your experience internally too, what you all are finding out as you go.
Yeah, I'll definitely report back. I'm excited.
Yeah, yay.
It'll be fun.
Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.